Hi, this is a Communication Matters presentation about what's new from AssistiveWare during COVID-19 times. I'm David Niemeyer. I'm the AssistiveWare founder and CEO. There are a couple of topics I want to talk about today. The first is the impact the coronavirus pandemic has had on AACUs. Then I'll talk a little bit about what we've done to address some of the communication challenges that have arisen out of the pandemic. I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing to and continue to do to support communication in a world that's pretty much in turmoil. I'll talk a little bit about a new feature in Prologue2Go and SimPod where you can adjust the skin tone of people symbols. I'll talk about the AssistiveWare AAC training series, and I have a couple of other new things to report as well as some reminders. So what has been the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on AAC? This graph shows the daily active Prologue2Go devices. This is basically how many devices are active on any particular day. As you can see in this graph that goes from December 1st last year to September 6th this year, AAC use fluctuates quite a bit. You see that the busiest periods where most devices are active are the weekdays, and it's used less during weekends. You can also see a dip during holiday periods where the number of active devices goes down to about 50%. What you can also see is the influence of the pandemic, where the moment schools were closing, the number of active devices was cut into almost half. You see some use again during the June period when some schools were becoming more active again. You see a decline again during the holiday period of the summer, and then recently you see a small pickup. Now this is based on data that Apple collects from all devices where users have opted in. We can look at not just the UK but also the United States, and you basically see the same kind of pattern. But one difference is that in the UK, schools closed about a week later than in the US, which you can clearly see here. So basically what this means is that about 50% of the AAC users did not have access to AAC or were not using it anymore because of the coronavirus pandemic. And in many cases, this is because AAC use is used a lot at school, but AAC is not used as much at home. And you can really see what the consequences of something like that during a pandemic like this. In many cases, it's not only students that no longer had access to AAC, but many therapists lost access because they are usually using shared devices which are located in school and they didn't have access to those. Obviously, that makes teletherapy much harder to practice. Not to mention that not every family can really benefit from that because families may not have internet access, they may not have a computer or iPad to use during a teletherapy practice. Another thing that we found is that in many cases AAC evaluations were postponed, not happening because often they are supposed to happen in person, and obviously that posed challenges due to the virus. And that in turn meant that many students and adults who probably really needed AAC were not getting access to it because there had not been an evaluation. Finally, I want to point out also that AAC users and their families are among the most vulnerable for illness and job loss. Vulnerability for the coronavirus is pretty obvious, but in many cases these are also families where only one parent is working because the other parent is taking care of the children, and that means that if a job is lost, the whole family is suddenly without resources. So all in all, AAC users have been really hard hit by the pandemic. There are some things that are, add a little bit more positive note. What we've seen in some individual cases is that parents got much more involved in AAC use because of the homeschooling. And so there are definitely some students that have actually really benefited from what was happening, but the vast majority has really been struggling. So what have we done to address some of these communication access challenges during the pandemic? First thing we did was we created a program for temporary Prologue2Go licenses. They were intended for existing Prologue2Go users that did not have access to their school iPads but did have an iPad at home on which a Prologue2Go temporary license could be installed. We also provided licenses for therapists that are working with Prologue2Go users but did not have their own license because they usually depended on a school iPad. We ran this program from April to August. We've terminated it now because we saw that the number of people requesting access to these licenses was really declining as schools were getting their stuff sorted out and finding ways to provide students access again, and therapists as well. But we also know that in many cases, people do not have an iPad. They do not have any high-tech AAC, but still it's really important that they have a way to communicate effectively. So we created light-tech Crescendo quick communication boards. These align with our 7x11 Crescendo vocabulary in Prologue2Go. These boards were designed to provide access to a wide range of communication functions with just small, simple boards. And they're based on our Crescendo core word boards, but we expanded the amount of core, especially verbs and adjectives. We added some high frequency and powerful fringe words. We added vocabulary to support strategies to be better understood, which are sometimes referred to also as communication repair strategies. And we added vocabulary to support social interaction. You can download these boards for free from our website. They're available in English, French, Spanish, and Dutch. This gives you an idea of what the boards look like. So top left, you see our core word board. The second one, bottom left, shows some of the fringe words, some of the nouns, additional verbs, additional adjectives. Then top right shows also additional prepositions, more adjectives, but also, for example, question words, communication repair phrases. And then finally, in the bottom right, we have the alphabet, a lot of social interaction vocabulary. So again, these are available for free download from our website. Now, communication access is really important, but it's also important that once you have that communication access, that you learn how to communicate effectively about the things that really matter. And a lot has been going on in the world, and it's really important that AAC users are included in that conversation, that they can ask questions about what's happening, etc. So we created a blog post about how to use Prologue2Go, or any other device for that matter, to talk about the coronavirus. So that also AAC users can ask questions, you can explain using the AAC system why certain things are different now, etc. The second topic we covered was about what you can do to keep your AAC germ-free, because AAC devices are often handled by many people, and so it's really important to keep them free from germs. AAC in hospitals, in general, an important topic, but even more so during the coronavirus, because in many cases during the pandemic, AAC users are not able to bring a familiar communication partner along to the hospital when they need care. And that means it's really important to plan ahead on how are you going to communicate in the hospital setting. Sadly, coronavirus is not the only thing that's happening in the world. There is really a lot happening this year. It started out already with, for example, the protests in Hong Kong. But we've now also had the protest around the world for Black Lives Matters. And it's really important that AAC users can talk about the kind of topics that, about what's happening in the world. And this blog post takes two example concepts, discrimination and protest, and looks at how you can, even with just a core word board, communicate about those topics. How you can use with a little bit more vocabulary on the quick communication boards that I already discussed, or even on a full AAC system, how you can communicate about these topics using mainly core, but also some fringe. Because it's really important that if AAC users see things on TV, hear people talk about that they can join in that conversation and also share their fears, anxieties, and opinions. Another thing that we've started to do during the pandemic is Facebook Lives. as well as Zoom chats. And the Facebook Lives are sessions we regularly do on the AssistiveWare Facebook page, for example, book reading. And we also have the Zoom chats, which is for adult AAC users, and we organize those on our adult AAC users Facebook group. And they're often the one time in the week that adult AAC users from across the world have an opportunity to talk with other adult AAC users, because let's be honest, in many cases people don't get out of their homes as much as normally, and so they have much less time for interaction and really talking about the things they really care about. So if you want to know about these and other community activities, one of the things you can do is join our Facebook groups, and you can obviously also sign up for our newsletter. As I mentioned at the beginning, we also added an important new feature to Prologue2Go and Sympod, which is the ability to adjust the skin tone of the people symbols throughout the vocabulary with a single setting. You can choose from 5 different skin tones, and this is available in Prologue2Go and in Sympod. Let me show you how that works. So here we have Prologue2Go. As you can see, this is the regular default skin tone. I can go to the options, then I go to appearance, and I go to skin tone, and now I can adjust the skin tone. And as you can see, it changes directly on the symbols, not just on the home page, but also on other pages as well. Another thing we've done is create the AssistiveWare AAC training series. Now, normally we travel the world every year and we attend conferences, not just Communication Matters in the UK, but conferences in Australia and the United States and in other countries. This year, that's obviously not an option, so we decided to focus on online training where we can share knowledge online. There are 2 areas that we are covering. One is general AAC implementation topics, and the other is more product-related implementation topics. We have world-renowned AAC experts on our team that are presenting these sessions, and duration is typically 30 to 60 minutes for a session. They're available as video-on-demand 30-day rentals, and every once in a while we do a live webinar too. These are some of the topics that are already available on demand, but more topics and more speakers will be coming in the coming months. Go to AssistiveWare.tv to access these. There are previews available for each of them. So I had some other news and some reminders to share with you. First of all, Sympod. We introduced Sympod last year. It's the only English pod solution that has digital and print in a single easy-to-use package. It's for iPad. We already had the monthly and digital subscriptions through the App Store, but we've recently added support for 3-year and 5-year licenses, which can be useful for funding, and also multi-seat licenses for schools so that it's much easier to manage your Sympod licenses as a school. Last year, we also released Prologue2Go 7, which allows using Prologue2Go side by side with other apps. We added support for FaceTime and phone calls. You can only do this on iOS, not on Mac. Yes, we actually introduced a Mac version of Prologue2Go as well. And then we added support for dark mode. Prologue for text, we had a major update. Dark mode support, we added FaceTime and phone call support, just like in Prologue2Go. AirDrop support, Google Drive support. This is for things like backups. And then we also updated our support for My Own Voice by Capella Group. This is a solution that allows you to record your own voice. For example, if you have motor neuron disease, you can record your voice through My Own Voice before you lose it and then use it in Prologue for Text to communicate with. And Prologue for Text is available on the Mac as well. We're a mission-driven company. That means that sometimes we put a lot of effort in creating software, but there are also many other things we do to support our mission. And one of those is sharing information and knowledge. And one of the things we recently created was a communication functions poster that really focuses on what all the different reasons are that we communicate, because we know that people have a tendency to focus way too much on requesting and choice making. But there are so many other communication functions. This is the front of the poster. On the back there is some more information about this topic, but also some examples of these communication functions. Another section on our website that is relevant is the Learn AC section. We are covering AC implementation topics there. This is device agnostic, so you can use it with any system, whether you're talking about symbol-based or text-based AC. This is not limited to our own products. And we continue to add relevant content there as well. It's available in English, but also in French, Spanish, and Dutch. And with that, I've come to the end of this short presentation. I hope you found it useful, and I wish you all well in these complicated and sometimes really hard and dangerous times. Thank you.